Hi all and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Hope you all enjoyed last Monday's show. A bit heavy. We'll cover some aspects in tonight's show. There is a bit of intel, a lot of questions and some fairly interesting op-ed pieces to cover tonight. So let's get into the details and read between the lines. Right, the link for the show is Spreaker.com/user/895-5881, and you can also listen live on the ever-expanding thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. We're making a couple of adjustments today, but you'll be able to, we've added a search engine, so you want to type in Two Worlds, it will bring up the details of that, or the 4-year loop, or you name it, and so it will be easier to locate the different shows of what that entails. So there's all the articles and self-empowerment on there as well. The shielding document, you must use that now. There's no ifs or buts, no delaying or waiting. Don't come crying to us or me if you get attacked. That's what it's there for. So that's on the Think Different. And we have the Facebook page, Truth, Honour and Integrity, despite it being 4 members less than last week, given some are completely losing it. And we have the Facebook social media alternative, MeWe.com, also Truth, Honour and Integrity. And if you can't find it, send an email to the show, where you can also send comments and questions for the show to truth.honour.and.integrity@gmail.com. We have the People's Club website, that's thepeoplesclub.org, and also my Patreon website, that's patreon.com/TommyW/memberships. And to the person who gave the large donation, thank you again. Please remove that pledge, because otherwise they'll take the same amount next month. So you know who you are, and thank you once again. We have I've drastically reduced the news this week. I'm having difficulty keeping up with the volumes of questions, with so much to cover now, and this show does cover a lot. So I've reduced the news items this week, and then we're going to go into Q&A and a little bit of intel, and also the op-ed pieces. Mark Hill of Clinton News Network, better known as CNN, this week was dropped as a pundit by the cable news network after he made comments about boycotting Israel. That is a big step and a big change for the media, for someone to step out like that, and was calling for a free Palestine from the river to the sea, which, for those of you who don't know, I suspect it goes back to the 1967 borders. Although the Anti-Defamation League and the National Council of Young Israel both condemned his comments. No surprise there. Hill defended his stance and took to Twitter saying, "At no point did I endorse, support or even mention Hamas," which is what was used against. And Mark Lamont Hill has had his contract with Clinton News Network cancelled. And he also denied saying he used the river to the sea comment during the speech, although conservatives and pro-Israel figures blasted him for referencing a phrase often used by anti-Israel terror groups. Hill claimed on Twitter the phrase precedes Hamas by more than 50 years and also has a variety of meanings. He tweeted his intention was to highlight that 20% of Palestinians living in Israel are systematically denied access to equal rights, and also dismissed the angry and often vitriolic responses he was receiving from Zionist groups. That's what happens when you, they call it free speech, but it appears not. It's only free speech with limitations. Much for those who want to really say free speech anyway. Where are we next? We have warned about this in previous shows, and this article comes as no surprise to me. And the popular spit-in-a-tube genetic testing companies like Ancestry.com and 23andMe can and frequently do sell your data to drug makers. Oh my. But on Wednesday, one of those partnerships became much more explicit when the pharmaceutical giant GlaxoSmithKline announced it was acquiring a $300 million stake in 23andMe. As part of a 4-year deal between the two companies, GlaxoSmithKline will comb 23andMe's genetic data to look for new drugs to develop, also referred to as drug targets. Read between the lines. We'll also use the genetic data to inform how patients are selected for clinical trials. And if that news has you thinking about how your own genetic material is being used for research, know that though the DNA you submit to these services is ostensibly kept private, but leaks do happen, as we all know, and deliberate leaks in my opinion. Anyway, privacy advocates say that such incidents could allow your data to find its way elsewhere, perhaps without your knowledge. Like I said, I did warn about them. The concern I had is there appears to be only one genetic DNA testing facility throughout the whole of North America, and that's right next to Dugway, Area 52. That's what bothered me more than most, is who was using it, who was getting it, and what were they doing with it. We've been genetically interfered over a long period of time. We don't have to add to it. We're having a discussion today about life longevity, and Shane mentioned it in his recent interview. Those who lived on a 3D zone, not necessarily planet, zone, used to live 900 to 1500 years, not 70 to 80. And the reason being, imagine if we doubled our lifespan and we lived to 150. We would have worked out their plans a long time ago. They have certain plans that repeat every 70 years. Like I said, the Nazis, 1940 and 2010. Well, at that point, many have passed on, or they're too young, or they're too old, or just don't care. So, these genetic people never do anything for our benefit, and never have, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent, because the genetics, even the genetics that the heirs tried to try and cut out, the black voodoo that was prevalent on this planet a long time ago, and has been for a long time, it went wrong. And I wouldn't, whilst it may be fun finding out who your ancestors are, I think the risks are far too high. The Taliban has carried out an attack in Afghanistan this week, whoever the Taliban may be, on the base of the British security firm G4S. Oh my. A British man was among 5 employees killed when gunmen stormed their compound. Of course, G4S is one of these Blackwater type security groups. Security is a bit of a misnomer, and they help, according to them anyway, help guard the area around the British embassy in Kabul. The US-led invasion of Afghanistan in 2001 contributed to a boom in the private security business. And in recent years, the presence of contractors has decreased, mirroring the withdrawal of foreign troops. However, insecurity in Afghanistan remains widespread, and there are still thousands of NATO troops, and the demand for armed security of foreign embassies, military bases and NGOs is still quite high. So there's still a presence of foreign security companies working in Afghanistan today. G4S, for example, say they have about 1,200 members in Afghanistan and have been in that country since 2003. Half the workforce is Afghan and the other half is made up of foreign nationals, including British people. Aside from providing security at the British Embassy, the company has other private security contracts for NGOs and corporate clients. The company trains and employs security guards and is involved in the training and mentoring of Afghan national forces. Also, they say, are you telling me, given, let's just take G4S for example, it takes 15 years to train soldiers? If that's the case, why have so many of the American youth remember the song 19? Did they start training them when they were 4? It's all bullshit. You know, the American military, or should I say the US military, Inc., that are there since 2001. And it takes 15 years, 17 years, where the US is concerned, to train people as soldiers. I think no. They're just swinging their lead because they're frightened of bringing them home, is the real answer. Following the directed energy weapon attack by the SSP in California, of course the Portal people, that is the mainstream media for those who are new listening to this show, the Portal people and the Weather Channel people were all stating that the missing was anything ranging from 1,200 to 3,000. Well, a new report has come out this week, and the number of people missing is 25. Where did they get 1,200 or 3,000 from? Now, this was also put out by the Butte County Sheriff, who had put the number of missing down to 49 on Friday, and it was 500 a week ago. Now, the number of dead has stood unchanged at 88, and the Camp Fire, which devastated the town of Paradise, we'll have more on that later, northeast of San Francisco last month, and workers have been combing through the debris of more than 18,000 destroyed homes. We'll have more on that later. Those of you with semi-long memories will remember, I think it was October the 18th show or 19th, somewhere around there, where we put out in the intel that the Crown Prince, Saudi Crown Prince, was responsible in some way for killing the Saudi journalist, Mr. Khashoggi. And the CIA seemed to agree with that, and the government, who don't know which way to go at the moment, are frightened of committing. Well, the head of the CIA will now brief Congress on it, on the Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi murder. And Gina Haspel is to talk to Senate leaders this week, and as she was absent from last week's briefing on the Secretaries of State and Defence, which kind of angered some in Congress. But there's a lot of faction games going on at the moment. It's fairly thick and heavy as the panic not only sets in DC, but many other places. Now, Mr. Khashoggi was killed in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in October, and the US media have reported that the CIA had concluded Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman probably ordered the killing, which is slightly different to which he did. And the Saudis have charged 11 people but deny that the Crown Prince was involved. And US media reports say that the CIA has evidence he exchanged messages with Saud al-Qahtani, who allegedly oversaw the murder. Now, the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Defence Secretary James Mattis had told senators last week there was no direct evidence of the Crown Prince's involvement. And Mr. Trump has said that the CIA findings on the Crown Prince were not conclusive. But on November the 20th, he said it could very well be that the Crown Prince had knowledge of this tragic event. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. It seems they're frightened to commit, some people. Won't always be the case. Complaints going on in the UK about greater powers given to HMRC, which is to tackle tax avoidance and evasion, are undermining the rule of law and justice, warns a House of Lords report this week. And the Economic Affairs Committee said HMRC has been granted some broad, disproportionate powers without effective taxpayer safeguards. They were imposing high penalties designed to deter taxpayers from appealing, and it is stated that they are a tax on justice, and the committee claimed it has demanded a review of the oversight of HMRC and its powers. A bit like what's going on with the IRS. Lord Forsyth of Drumlene, chairman of the committee, said HMRC is right to tackle tax evasion and aggressive tax avoidance. However, a careful balance must be struck between clamping down and treating taxpayers fairly. And our evidence has convinced us that this balance has tipped too far in favour of the HMRC and against the fundamental protections of every taxpayer is or should expect. Now, the committee's report warned that some of the powers, as per usual, disproportionately affect unrepresented and lower income taxpayers. It's only the lower income taxpayers that actually pay the tax, and the lower middle. One day people will work that out. People power. So many think we don't have it, but we do. And here's another example. Smart meter installations have had their steepest drop yet over the past 3 months, according to official data, amid suggestions that homeowners are refusing to have them installed. The number of smart meters being installed in homes declined by 10% over the past quarter, after falling continuously for the past 9 months. And this is according to data of the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. Industry sources said this was because households are refusing smart meters over fears they may effectively trap them in overpriced energy deals, as they will lose their smart function if they switch. They also said technical difficulties and a short supply of new style meters were factors behind the fall. They won't tell us the real reason, as people have worked it out that they're dangerous, that's why. And Peter Earle, the head of energy, said after all the flack about issues surrounding smart meters, a 10% drop in installations over the last quarter is another massive headwind for the rollout programme. It sure is. I expect that to increase as more and more people gain a bit of courage and fight back. Foreign and domestic trade has been going down rapidly, and yes, it's all blamed on Trump and the tariffs. It's bullshit. Tariffs are to do with the dragon groups and nothing to do with countries. But the reality is the global conglomerate companies are all collapsing due to having nowhere to steal funds from anymore. That's the reality. And when you add in the new banking restrictions and protocols and clearance done by Kim, and the world economy, which was all contained by a very few companies, has started to collapse into the dust. There is a solution, but one that doesn't satisfy the global control freak psychopaths. It will get far worse before it gets better. The economy will tank and the world will go into a full global depression unless we remove the obstacles at the top and the deep states, not state, ensconced in all the major countries of the world. Now, the foreign trade in November, according to each market, last year the emerging markets was operating at 15.2%. Currently, it's now 9.7%. In the advanced economies, it was 7.2%. It's now 5.3%. In Asia, it was 14.9%. It's now 10.3%. In Europe, it was 4.4%. It's now 2.1%. North America was 9.9%. It's now 7.4%. And Latin America was 12.3%. And they've gone down to 12.2%. That's the trends. It's going down. Record imports in October drove the US trade deficit to the highest level in a decade. The Commerce Department said Thursday that the gap between what the United States sells and what it buys from foreign countries hit 55.5 billion in October, and the fifth straight increase and highest since October 2008. Now, the politically sensitive deficit in the trade of goods with China also rose 7.1% to a record 43.1 billion. The goods gap with the European Union widened 65.5% to a record 17.6 billion, which is led by shipments of medicine and also cars. Overall imports rose 0.2% to a record 266.5 billion, and exports fell 0.1% to 211 billion. Mr. Trump campaigned on a pledge to slash America's long-standing trade deficit with the rest of the world, and despite his import taxes on steel, aluminum and Chinese goods, the deficit so far this year is running at 11.4%, above the January-October 2017 rates. US exports of soybeans targeted for retaliatory tariffs by China dropped by 46.8% in October. The economies are all collapsing. I'm not going to mince words. I'm not one of the portal people. I don't have to lie. It's tanking, literally. Yes, some of the markets can be a gauge. Not really, because they're all largely faked anyway, as we all know. But there is a solution. The solution's sitting there on the table in every country. It requires some courage, a set of balls. That's all it takes. The old order was designed to fail. Has Kim and the team helped with some of that? A little. But it was a harvesting program. The whole thing was being harvested, including the clowns. And if you think you're going to back your way out of it, you're wrong. The solution's on the table. The world's largest futures exchange, the CME Group, had to repeatedly halt trading in US stock futures for brief periods this morning because of violent price moves in an unusual, it's not unusual, trust me, intervention that has stunned traders. US stock market futures reopened this morning in Asia after an unscheduled closure to mark the funeral of the former President George Herbert Walker Bush on Wednesday, 4 years too late. And Tuesday's trade saw Wall Street selling off heavily, with the key indices down 3% and the Dow 800 points. And here's the kicker. When the futures reopened in the Asian trading on Thursday, stock futures plunged again, falling up to 1.9%, although they did recover and were down just 1%. But the CME announced this morning that it intervened to prevent steeper falls in US equity futures. And a note from an institutional clearing desk in Sydney sent to traders and seen by the Business Insider, CME experienced multiple velocity logic events from the open in equity futures today, and it caused, this is the key, several 10-second pauses where limit orders were accepted but market IOC orders were rejected, causing multiple algorithm slices to get rejected. Now the pauses allow participants to enter the market, preventing even harder moves. So they were pausing. Here's an admittance of what I've already told you in this show. These markets are rigged. They have a 4 to 7 second lag, which may not seem much, but it is to them. Today, they've admitted they were using 10-second pauses. So in other words, they manipulate the price and then allow other marketeers to come in. That's your stock market for you. Right, let's get into some questions. We'll see if I can get as many out. I don't think I'm going to be able to cover them all again. I'm probably about 2 weeks behind. Hi Drake. 2 weeks. Oh dear. I think there's a Drake question. Any recommendations, suggestions on how people can go about finding out how to correctly work on their inner work and shadow work without going down any rabbit holes? Do you know of any resources, info, places to look at, especially if they're starting out for the first time? Some people have covered it. You know, Chloe wrote some documents up as well on it. But we've covered it extensively in all the shows. You know, maybe you can go and type it in and find it on the Think Different site. But the key to it is finding out more about yourself. What upsets you? What triggers you? Why does it trigger you? Is it from a childhood event? Is it trauma? Is it guilt of something you feel you may have done wrong? Is it shame over a certain event in your life? Was it something that happened to you when you were a child or when you were an adult that still plagues you? That's the inner work. The shadow work is more to do with how you mask yourself off, where you cover up weaknesses and insecurities, which we all do from time to time, and so your shadow is not integrated within you, so you, in essence, you don't trust yourself. And it's certain shows that we do, including Mondays, have a trigger effect on people. It's like the piece we did the other week, Black Reparations, triggered one or two people. If it generates a reaction that is not normal to your normal way of reacting, then it's a trigger in some way. And the more triggers you deal with, the more layers you pull away, and the more space you have in the vessel to accept the better frequencies. We've collected a lot of baggage, our own personal stuff. We've also what I termed sin eating, which is consumed vast quantities of the crimes and acts of the cabal and politicians and you name it. And it's all about processing it and letting it go. Forgive yourself and forgive others who have done harm to you. Holding on to it and holding grudges forever is carrying around a negative frequency. Let it go. It doesn't help you. One iota. If the soul leaves the body only after decomposition, what about all the harvesting of the organs? It's a completely different thing now. If the organ is placed in another body, does that prevent the soul from ascending? No, definitely not. Only other events that we covered in Monday and last week's show does that. Not no more. Why are we the only species on the planet whom can't look directly into the sun because it's too bright for us? Has this to do with, or is this to do with part of our alien origin, or is there another reason? Well, it's all about the limitation program and messing with genetics. I don't think there's many other species or animals that can look directly into the sun, because it can, with your eye being a lens, it's like using a magnifying glass and pointing the sun at it. It will burn. But we had a broader spectrum of sight once. In fact, all the known five senses have all been dulled. Our height has been dulled. Our life longevity has been dulled. You name it. It's all part of the limitation program. Do you have any knowledge what it means when people can remember their own birth, since I can remember mine? No, good luck to you. Some people can. Some people can remember past lives and some people can't. Some people have no memory the first 5 or 6 years, and others can remember their own birth and even being inside the mother. You know, everyone's different and everyone has their own memories. Are the UPU and Galactic Council aware of the direct mind control tech that has been misused against human beings to torment, rape and control them against free will? Yes, but largely it's a human to human problem now, and we have to fix it. You know, the overarching interference of non-humans in the past has been stopped. We have to fix, largely because there's not enough of us on the planet that can deal with that type of interference, and that's why certain ones have been prevented for doing this and doing that, and the peace treaty rubber stamped that. But it's up to us, the population, to say we don't want it, not ignore it, because by ignoring it you're consenting. Now, like I've said, I think there needs to be some help provided, given a lot of the clans and the Order and the minions are still running what is essentially an off-world program. We're still waiting for some feedback on that. Can you tell us about the explosion of unicorns in every form and on so many items in the store? No idea. At least it's better than bloody cats. Here comes the cat police. I'm in trouble now. Many religious groups consider martyrs as the highest honour that they can receive, and that their soul will be in the highest places in heaven and get rewarded. Yeah, it's a trap. Even though they sometimes are responsible for huge loss of life, such as suicide bombers. Is that a form of misinformation to let their soul only stay in the lower astral, or maybe the etheric level? Yeah, it's all a trick. It's the pact between the physical dark forces and the non-physical dark forces. The non-physical do certain tricks and magic as such, and they get the spoils of harvesting. The physical ones then don't have to do or face karma, because it's not them that's doing it. And it's been a dance of the dark that went on for far too long, and we're kind of pleased that we're getting to the end of that now. What is happening with Operation Hot Musket? I'll tell you what's happening. Bullshit. That's the top and bottom line of it. This is 2014, Luke News again, Jade Helm. It's all the same script that they roll out every 4 years. You know, coming soon. The militias marching again, like they were supposed to be marching in 2014. Yeah, right. You know, you're going to get a lot of this. In fact, we've had a lot of it this year. I'll probably have more about that later. A while back you pondered to yourself the concept of Mother Earth could be a psyops of sort, since there's so much consumption of others and parasitical expressions on this planet and in nature. How do you feel about that idea now? It was a theory, that's a possibility. I don't think it's changed too much. You know, there's been a lot, almost everything on and in this planet has been infected in one way or another. And it's only over the last 5 years or so that things are starting to be corrected. And maybe that will be another one. My son is in the US Air Force building missiles, even though he doesn't much care for what he does. It's his job. He has 3 more years out of 6 years to do left before getting out of active duty. Wondering if he may be a soul dyer if he doesn't kill anyone. I told him that if I were in his position, I would probably try not to shoot anyone but pretend. But he said he has to defend and protect his fellow colleagues as trained no matter what. I'm thinking it's probably better to try and talk him out of not re-enlisting if he has a choice not to go to the next round, if it makes a difference. We have to sort the military out in so many levels. It's going to be ugly. All these people have all been sacrificed for nothing. I'm sorry, that's the truth. They're not fighting for freedom. They're not fighting for America. They're not fighting for people in or fighting against so-called bad guys. It's all about control and stealing resources and imposing their type of government. It's the top and bottom line of it. And I made one suggestion or proposal. It's turned out to be a proposal that went on last week's show about returning the soldiers from abroad back home in a phased in period. From all accounts, they can't just go home because it will cause chaos. But we being the I shouldn't say we, the US military have been set up as mugs, like the British military was set up previously to be the bully boys. Unfortunately, the people of both countries carry the shame of that, but it's not our doing. And I would like to see the military disbanded, personally, and we'll create a new military that is based on defence, not attack. The vast amount of money that's wasted on military per se is sickening, really, when you've got so many people who haven't got the basic essentials of life, and yet we can waste 716 billion a year, which is more than the GDP of probably half the countries around the world, on weaponry. More and more people are going to turn away from that, and I think we're seeing signs globally of people turning away from that. They're tired of war. The Portal people won't tell you that there's a lot of Israeli people campaigning on behalf of the Palestinians, and likewise. They won't tell you that because they want you to continue with the divide and conquer, so they can create more war bonds and money out of thin air, which is why they're trying to launch World War III. They won't succeed, but it doesn't stop the idiots trying. You cause a world war, you can then print out bonds for the war, and then monetize and leverage them. That's how it works. But we have to do something about the military, not only in this country, globally, where it's a collective military, not a country-based military, which is always designed for divide and conquer, and where we protect this planet from outside and inside, not from creating wars on it. Once every country gains an ounce of courage and common sense and declares themselves sovereign, there's no need for war. Can entities mess with a person's car by making it do weird things on purpose to upset the person owning it? Yes, they'll do it through the security certificates and the chips in all cars. Yes, there was a certain date of cars, but if you take it in for an MOT or you take it in for a service, there's nothing stopping them installing a chip without your knowledge. You know, those OnStar and all the others are there for a reason, and largely to do with spying. It's the top and bottom of it, and we've allowed it. We have to either get people to rewrite software and hardware for everything, or take them out the car until they do. Don't buy them anymore. Then they have a problem. As you say, no one is coming to help or save us. Well, we've had help, but they're not here to save us per se. That's up to us. Then how do you know we will prevail in writing a new chapter with or without the support of the cabal, or is this just what you hope for? No, it's not just what I hope for. I have made several predictions over my time on the radio show that have come to fruition. It's our time. They know it, and more of us are realising it's our time. They've had their time. They failed. And, 2013, when I put out the RV will never happen, it hasn't. 2013 also said Nibiru wasn't coming, World War III wasn't coming. 2015 I said in a show with Shane, the cabal will not only trim the fat, they will eat the lean, and we'll be left with a few psychopaths with little wealth, little assets and little power. It's all unfolding. We will prevail. Shane kind of believes that we will operate in two worlds, where they will have their world but we won't participate. But eventually that world of theirs will empty out, because humanity, or certainly the organic souls, have decided we've had enough of this control system and limitation program and famine and haves and have-nots, divide and conquer, etc., etc. We want a chart. Essentially, we have a right to be adults. We've had enough of being children. All the sleepers are essentially children. They're not ready. Have you got any news in South Africa? Nothing that I can put out. There's a lot of things going on in Africa, a lot of positive things going on in Africa, but I'm reluctant to mention which countries, because every time you mention a country, IMF and UN goons turn up and threaten that president or prime minister or the central bank manager, you name it. So when it's safe to put out, I will be talking about Africa. We'll probably be talking about it fairly extensive, because a lot of those countries over there are tired of the control system and want to go a better way. It seems we don't have control of the SSP. Do we have control of any of the advanced tech or secret bases or classified research bases? the SSP would like to do an awful lot more than they have done. So there is a element of control of what they can and can't do. We have, we along with some of the species below, have limited their access, or not limited, initially limited, eventually eliminated any access to the real advanced tech, which could have catastrophic consequences. They won't be getting that tech back ever. The secret bases, we kind of messed up some of their secret bases recently by crashing all their servers, and they classified research bases the same. That's gone. No, there was no truth, as I understand it, to take out Air Force One when Trump was in Argentina, while Mr. Pence was in Mexico. Can you explain why the UPU doesn't enforce the treaty to enable Kim to release the funds? It's not up to the UPU to deal with human banking issues, and all the Galactic Council. You know, I've said this many times now. It's largely a human issue. In fact, practically it's a total human issue, and we have to fix things. You know, and we are and have and will continue to make enormous progress. But there's that much going on. You know, look at the items that gets covered just in this show. There's probably 30 to 50 items that get covered in one show alone. You know, and there's still a deeply ensconced program that's collapsing in on itself, and eventually it will collapse altogether. And I don't think we're that far off either, on so many levels. So the idea that the UPU would appear before agencies and go into banks, you would empty the bank out if some of the UPU beings went into the bank, I'm telling you. They're not all human. In fact, most aren't. But the UPU do enforce the treaty at the level they're required to do so. That is, others interfering with humans. That is the only level they will enforce the treaty. And hopefully I'm going to say that for the final time. All other problems that is on a human level is our responsibility. Reptilians and humans with large percentage reptilian DNA can control the minds of most humans. How can they do this if they cannot access the mental planes? Could they learn to feed off positive energy instead? Well, everyone has abilities, and some of them come in and combine abilities with others. Is how and why. You know, some of them are coming up, and I mean up, not down, from a higher dimensional frequency. That's the issue, where all the senses are ramped up compared to ours. Could they also learn to feed off positive energy instead? Yes, well, they're starting to do that. It will be a long process, but they have been lied to also, all of them. And there's quite a number who are really pleased with the peace treaty, and they're not slaves anymore. I've seen several claims about evaporating seas, such as the Mediterranean Sea. Is there any truth in that? Well, I have seen a few videos. What's doing it, I don't know. Maybe time shifts. Who knows? But I don't know the answer. How are we doing for time? It's an hour, and there's 3 pages, 4 pages. Oh dear me. I think I'm gonna go for another course for now and see how far I get. But probably the questions put on this week's show will not get answered. I'm reluctant to do an extra show because I have an extra show coming up on Monday. The return of Shane the Ruiner. So that will be Monday at 8 PM Eastern Standard Time. But let's see how far I can get in the next 10-15 minutes. If we are sovereign entities, can we then therefore at any moment choose to leave this place? And if we do, why should it be a problem? You're stuck in this lifetime. You chose to come here. It's quite a valuable vessel to be in. You just don't realise it yet. So quite why you'd want to leave. There's only many billions of entities who would love to take your place. You just haven't realised the importance of your own life force and vessel. Is this a game, albeit a serious one, with the purpose of refining and growing soul essence? It was. Unfortunately, it got badly corrupted and interfered with. Many of the New Age people turn around and we have to banish the dark. No, we don't have to banish the dark. They teach us dark lessons of how not to be. If you've got nothing to bounce off, then that's it. It's not possible for everyone to be 100% light. If what I understand to be correct, and this source was a bit naive in this universe where he or she or it created a universe of light only, and then dark came in. If you've got no lesson or knowledge of dark, that dark is going to infiltrate very, very quickly, and it's only when it becomes a massive external problem, at that point it's too late. It's a bit like some of a bit like termites in a tree. You don't see it's a problem until the bark starts falling off, or your wooden windows, because they eat the inside. And when the wood comes soft on the outside, it means there's nothing left to hold it in. And that's the same of creating all light. If you don't know it's dark, the dark will play its merry dance with no feedback. Because if everyone's 100% light and doesn't recognise dark, that is possibly what happened to this particular universe. Did our oversoul, or whatever totality of conscious essence that can be rendered unique, personality, vibration, agree to be here in this physical body as a minuscule soul fragment? That's exactly what took place. There's only a small part of you in here. Some of you may have recently started to experience your own multi-dimensional aspect. It takes quite a bit of processing and getting used to. You know, some of you have reported meeting yourself. That's an experience in and of itself. But yes, we're only a small fraction in here, much reduced. You mentioned that the military was sent to Haiti via orders from Anne. How is it that some still take commands from that entity? Is it for expectations of being paid by the RV or some other reason? And does she give orders to certain generals, dragons and factions and alt media based factions? Yes. It's nothing to do with the RV and everything to do with the overreaching thuggery of the dragon groups. It doesn't matter which one they are. None of them are beneficial to humanity, despite what certain alt media people may tell you. These dragon groups have played games with us for a long time. And it was them that set up the Rothschilds in the 1500s. It was them who had control of the trust and gave nothing back to the people. And now they haven't got control of the trust. All these dragon groups are coming forward and telling you they're humanitarian and they want to give funds out. No, they just want to steal it. You know, I've heard a number of the calls that Kim has to field. These people think we're all stupid. No, sorry. We know all the tricks and we don't fall for your bullshit anymore. Sorry. But yes, she gives orders to certain generals. Of course, she's the head of the Blue Dragon Group, which is the UK group. And whatever factions and obviously the alt media based groups that support her, and also the Clinton News Network, and not just CNN either. When we switch to the quantum system, will the everyday person have any idea that we've even made a switch? We're already using the quantum system. It's rewritten the whole banking code. Because money is the biggest energy transfer and harvester. That's why that field was dealt with. It does have other aspects, the source energy being one, and there's no end to its capabilities, providing the ones that use it operate in the highest intent. So not everyone will be able to use it. In fact, very few. So there's no light switch, it's going to just switch over. No, it's already happened. Will wages, pensions being delivered in the same way? I'm not so sure where that question is going. I'll try and answer it. Nothing drastic will change. There will be subtle changes. I've spoke about this before, phasing in and phasing out. I can't see how wages and pensions being delivered being any different. You know, you can have a completely different system like what they're trying to offer you with the crypto fresh air tokens. That's not the way to go. Will people still have to pay gas, electricity and phone bills in the same way? Well, I'm hoping some of them will get phased out in some ways, depending on how much of the new tech we get out and how long it takes. and will we still pay for goods and services? None of that will change it. What has changed is their ability to use those funds and hold them in certain accounts and offshore accounts and hedge fund bets and all that nonsense and leverage it. The actual structure hasn't changed. It's their ability to steal, launder and collect vast quantities and use the money that they collect on their platform programs. You know, when we went into the banking system and we emptied all the clearance accounts that they fraudulently hold, there was 180 billion in there every day. You imagine what they earn. You put that into the stock market. You know, you'd only have to earn 1%, and you've got a rather tardy interest, and then you decide to keep it a second day and a third day and a fourth day, and on it goes. That's what they've been doing, and that has now stopped. The question is not if they will strike out against the takedown of the system, but how. The obvious method would be a war, scorched earth, retaliation. Neither of those are happening. The ability to get the scorched earth weapon has been denied to them, and that is permanent. As for war, that's been prevented several times since 1990 and will continue to be so until they quit. The question goes on, I cannot see them relinquishing their money, control and power. Well, they've already relinquished their money because it's all been put back in the trust because it wasn't theirs to begin with. As for control and power, that's eroding away by the second. And the reality is the control and power is only contained by our own fear. The reality is they don't have either. The only thing that's keeping them in a position, or the illusion, which is the correct word, of power, is our own fear. People in the government, we need more people of courage to stand up. People in the Pentagon, more people of courage to stand up. Langley, the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, the police, stand up. It only takes a few. You'll find there's a lot of others who may act like they want the control system, but privately they know it's all over, and they're waiting for others to stand up so they can follow. That's all it takes. Wondering how Kim, Thomas or the UPU would intervene to prevent such a move, protect the innocent. We don't give out plans of what we're doing. The average guy, girl is completely oblivious to the order, factions, war and the manner world holding trust. The average person had no idea we're in a control system or a matrix. The average person doesn't realise they had no real free will. The average American doesn't realise we haven't got our own currency, bank or government or constitution. But it hasn't stopped the progress, has it? We'll work around them. We have done for a number of years now. We don't need them. But boy, will they need us. No further updates on the rods and the earth as yet. What does discourse at the highest levels on winding down the experiment called religion look like? Well, we're not discussing that either, because that's put certain people at risk. And if we have any more, it will be those types of things will be in the intel on the show. How do we, the people, get to have a say in negotiations? Well, it depends on what negotiations you're talking about. In essence, you already have, you just don't recognise it, or you are looking for external proof that you already have. Why do you think there's chaos going on around the world? Why do you think there's people being fired or resigned or done for corruption, in inverted commas? It's not really corruption. If these alleged sealed indictments are true, why do you think that took place? Why do you think Monsanto collapsed? Why do you think people are not having smart meters anymore? You've already had your say. Why do you think the truth is being exposed in volumes now? Why do you think people are turning mainstream media news off, or TV altogether? Because they had the say. We've all had our say. Yes, some people will be seen to be in more important positions because they have different abilities or different mindsets to the ones that don't. But you're never gonna, we can't even agree on simple things in general. But one I can guarantee you is those that are negotiating on behalf of the planet will do so for the benefit of all on the planet, not for the few. That I will guarantee. Was the soul catcher machine used to strategically put souls into specific families according to parents' plans? No, it was a joint thing, pact between the physical and non-physical dark forces. Whether the parents were involved, I'm not too sure. Curious about requests for prayers to break the seventh seal on Bardsey Island. A good thing or a bad thing? Well, it doesn't make any difference, but it's already passed. I put a warning last week about internet meditations, mass internet meditations, because none of them appear to have the right intent. Whether that's deliberate or not remains to be seen, but none of them appear to have the right, real intent. In another post regarding GM cutting jobs, you stated the following: the country is being hijacked by criminal elite and their mercenary and selective security groups. How do we get in front of this kind of behaviour, and how long can this go on? Again, that's more to do with plans and what we're going to do and how. That's best left. But everything on some level or in some way is being addressed. There's just that many things to cover all at once. It would have been nice if certain other people had done their jobs and removed certain elements to be less troublesome, shall we say. The longer it goes on, I don't see the real reason behind collecting sealed indictments, because whilst those indictments are sealed and those people or entities are still playing games, it just creates more issues on top of more issues. Right, I'm gonna leave those questions. There's probably another 2 or 3 pages. Sorry about that, but let's see if there's anything relevant. Query quickly. Simon Parkes, is he a fraud? My issue with Simon Parkes is him sexually interfering with female clients of his. There was at least 6 who were astrally raped following one-on-one sessions with Simon Parkes. And he did admit it, although he blamed his father, who he says was Anu. Except I know when Anu's here and when he's not. So that was my issue with Simon Parkes. The other issue with Simon Parkes is how much truth he can really say with a bloodline Illuminati family, a former politician, parents who worked for Langley and MI5-6, and he's also part mented. He will have been in the programs, as all Illuminati children families have. So how far can he go, and how much truth can he really put out? But it was the issue of the astral rapes that took place on 6. To my knowledge, there may have been more when I had to speak out. Right, we're going to have a single music break. I think. Yeah. Let's go with this one. We'll be back shortly. Hi all and welcome back. Trust in who we are, as nothing else matters. This will probably be a theme for the remainder of the show. Alright. Where are we? Oh, wrong way. So many questions. Right. Let's get to the intel. The clowns in the past week have tried to leverage resources against 19 African countries, which is bad enough. That failed. And but they went one step further to try and leverage Alaska following the SSP-induced earthquake. And they went one step further again and tried to leverage Paradise in California this week, which was also induced by the SSP clowns. The military in Paradise, California currently is not our military but theirs. Militia, you want a job? Your responsibility to run them out of town. They're not wanted. It's all about claiming the gold and a whole heap of other metals that is below, so they can leverage and get themselves back in the game and think they can pull off an RV, which is impossible. You can mine every single ounce or grain of in-ground resources and still not have enough for the down payment for an RV. We know, it's all mapped. Next item. All negotiations with clans, the deep state, dragon families, the order, the bloodline families and the militaries have now been cancelled due to their inability to face reality. We're just not wasting any more time with these goons. So whilst you piddle about waiting for some divine intervention, your gods to return, the Rothschilds RV or some fake elderly Chinese people to bail you out, which we told you many years ago, it's not happening. Except you didn't listen. Some did though. but the majority of those groups know. See, the problem is they all think they're so special with their titles and badges that they know everything with their funny handshake clubs. But one day reality will bite, and time is on our side, not theirs. We have planned for the future, whilst you plotted your own demise. One day you will all see that. Don't bother contacting us with another of your fake plans to help humanity with the goal of trying to steal funds. It just doesn't work anymore on any level. Comply with the peace treaty or die. It's that simple. We will accommodate you when you really want to help all others. We both know you will all have to come to us in the end. Some of you already have this week. I won't mention names. But just don't come with your I am or we are special attitude. We're not interested in that hierarchical bullshittery either. In our world, everyone will be treated as equal, not some compartmentalised slave system. That's your world, not ours. TikTok. Of course, we had the Bush Senior death announcement. I've got a piece on that later. But what the Bush death announcement brings is essentially another shockwave that has gone through society, and it will and has had a ripple effect throughout the slave minions operating for the cabal. See, Bush Senior carried an aura around with him that induced fear and made people follow orders or pay the price. That family has carried that aura for around 100 years now. But with the announcements of his passing, that aura of fear is now gone. George W. and Jeb just do not carry the same power and fear factor that he had. Their stock will weaken quickly and will enable more to come forward and expose now the kingpin has gone. And what it symbolises is another crack in the old system that can't or won't be replaced. And as they topple one by one, our opportunity to replace them with something better will also increase. The sands of time are running low on Cheney, Rumsfeld, Kissinger, Jacob Rothschild and the Clintons. TikTok. Update from Monday's show. Realm 7 has now gone also. We will further update as more details become available. Next item. It is expected something rather big publicly could happen between now and the next show. Next item. Ongoing public awareness is increasing. The people, portal people will call it riots. We call it freedom. And it will spread around the globe. Or the flat earth, if you believe in that crap. Not that it makes much difference. Next item. Pentagon people and other departments of deep state. Yes, we know you're broke. Oops. Message to you. Fix shit on behalf of the American people and pay will arrive. It's that simple. Next item. Q and some members have been referencing the Pacer family, and I managed to find some time to listen to one QAnon type guy on the internet referencing it also of how the Pacers bought out the Vatican in 1860s, 1870s time for 400 million, and today who run the Vatican, which suggests that they are the black nobility, or part of it anyway. But it's also how they set up the Rothschilds and another family called the Spring family as the front runners for their hidden operations. Now, this is a classic cabal or the order tactics, and has gone on for far too long. It's like them promoting the Illuminati, except the Illuminati doesn't exist anymore, and they have everyone following an extinct program, and sit there laughing at us. And this is what they've done. They always put others' puppets forward and hide in the shadows. You know, it's like people blaming Trump for the world's ills and America's ills. He's so far down the scale, it's not even funny. But they also have another tactic of changing their names, or changing the vowels in their name, or shortening or increasing their name. And there are many variants of how they do that, like Bayer, which was formerly Bauer, which is Rothschild. They just change one vowel. In fact, most of the famous name actors, the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s and onwards, and actresses all alter their name to cover up their Jewish or Germanic identities. Even in the alt media, you've got Sean Stone, son of Oliver Stone, whose real name is Silverstein. Or you have Reitzinger, or is it Ratzinger? Hence the Pope connections suddenly becomes Rights. They're the examples. So the tactic of using people as a public battering ram or the public fall guy has gone on for a long time. And the latest American version is Mr. Trump. Now, it matters not whether Trump is a good guy, bad guy, or an indifferent, when you have a whole heap of clowns running the show, all largely unknown and all hidden away under the banner of the deep state. Except the deep state is also a front group, because there's hidden elements behind that as well. Like the Vatican and Pope Francis. He no more dictates Vatican policy than you or I. It's all done by the grey and black popes under the tutelage of the black nobility group. The 13 families, the Medicis, the Aldobrinis, etc. But yes, I can confirm the Pacers were a player in the game. And yes, I can confirm that they were also part of the trust, and can now confirm that they are losing wealth, power and assets the same as all the other clowns. Now, I mentioned the Spring family earlier and how names change. Well, the QAnon was referencing a document that, in my opinion, goes way too deep and is way too detailed for an ordinary researcher. That person has had to have been involved in some intelligence program one way or another to garner that detailed information and put out that information. Now, the document is contained on the CIA website, and the author is Fritz Springmeister, which some of you may have heard on the internet. But remember that name change again. Is it really Fritz Springmeister, or is it Fritz Spring? I could be wrong, and I'll hold my hands up if that's the case. But why is an internet researcher's alt media document on a publicly available Langley website? Time will tell. Where are we? Let's get this set up. The outpouring this week of pure vomit of a man, and I say that loosely, this week, a man who I predicted his death would be revealed in past shows, and finally confirmed publicly anyway, of the 4-year loop theory I first considered back in 2013. Now, it was confirmed privately in 2015 and announced Bush's death date week as far back as then. And this 4-year loop is all about creating a timeline back so they think they can win. It won't matter what they try, it won't work. And no matter how much they try to convince people it's 2014, that won't work either. Drake and Anna Von Reitz both put out narratives in the past month of incidents that took place in 2014 that they're passing off as now. They didn't. David Wilcock was caught in doing 2012 repeat articles in his blog in 2016. And there are many other articles floating around the alternative media dated 2014 as well, and passing them off as 2018 and happening now. Like the Ukraine. I read out the 2 stories last week and everyone thought it happened the week before, except one of them happened in 2014. This is another program, and it's time for people to recognise it. But should the 4-year loop continue, late next November will see us all experience a positive global shift of a major magnitude. Should it also continue into 2020, expect Hillary to die, and she already has for those who are new to this show, to be announced in September 2020. Although rumours this week suggest it could be closer than we think. Now, we all have people in the cabal that we dislike more than others. And mine was Bush Sr. Sheriff Sr. is the real name. Satan's spawn from the loins of the Nazi funder Prescott Bush. who, when found guilty during and after the war, there was a ruling made that no Bush family member would ever serve as a politician again. And yet we ended up with 2 more generations of Bush Senior and Bush Junior. Of course, the latter was installed on what, quite frankly, was a national disgrace of an election in 2000. The disappointing aspect of it is there was far too little opposition to it. Bush Senior was also a part of the intelligence structure, which has nothing to do with America. Of course, we had OSS, with SS being the operative part, which then morphed into the CIA, riddled with former Nazis brought here mainly in Operations Paperclip and Overcast, which was approved by President Truman, who followed President Hoover, whose father was of German-Swiss ancestry, and perhaps his real name was Huber, not Hoover. And also Roosevelt, who attended school not in America, but in Germany from the age of 9. Truman, it was, who signed off on Project or Operation Paperclip. Truman also signed off on NATO. And again, there is German ancestry in his family. Perhaps his real name is Truman with a double L, N rather, not a single N. And his middle initial of S he had, and yet he had no middle name. Perhaps he missed an S off, as in SS. And then it was followed by Eisenhower. You couldn't get a more Germanic name if you tried. He approved the building of Langley in Virginia in 1959. And he also laid the cornerstone of it, signifying Freemasonry. It was he who also set up the Nazi-laden NASA also. And it was he who infamously sold 2% of the American population into an ET abductions program in 1954. But quite how this country had Germanic-leaning people at the head of the White House from 1929 through to 1961, and there was no apparent rejection of it, is beyond me. It's almost as naive as the Brits for having a German in the palace during both World Wars. Bush Senior, having lurked in the background of the CIA, was finally appointed head of it, although only for 1 year, which smacks of clear out to me, to install more of his own program people in. So having cleared out the Nazis link from the White House, in came another family bloodline group called the Kennedys, who vowed to remove many things, but their main goal was against the Bush family line. Now, the Bush family won out, as that day in Dallas proved, with George Herbert Walker Bush standing outside the repository with the father of the current politician Ted Cruz watching it all unfold. And yes, he was involved in it. George Herbert Walker Bush was involved in many rogue things during his lifetime. The more lesser known one is his starring role in the MK Ultra program. involving children aged 6 months onwards. Where they put children in a closed-off pen and introduce large cats and other predatory animals, snakes of the venomous types, scorpions and spiders of the venomous types, where they entice the animals or the other creatures to attack the children to see which ones had less fear. Those exhibiting less fear went into the next program. The rest got mauled or killed off. Bush Senior was the main leader of that program, alongside the entity known as the Queen Mother. I've spoken to people direct who were in that program, who were watching that program. He was the leader in the Skull and Bones, a main player in the worship of Moloch, the owl entity in the Bohemian Grove, plus a whole heap of other programs that involved killing and torturing masses of people in America and various other countries. We won't forget his and the family's role in 9/11 either, with other psychopaths, Cheney and Rumsfeld. Also, you can roll out your Langley Buddies inspired document called the Patriot Act within a month of it happening either. We won't forget that. And who can forget his legendary lizardized speech about the New World Order? For those of you who don't remember, this is it.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
This man and his family of drug runners have brought untold misery to many people, death to many people, both played and orchestrated in the takeover of America, the country, into a fascist regime that perpetrates through every single department of government and all the other departments him and his ilk created that operate outside of the government. So please spare us the vomit-inducing eulogies all over the media. This man was despicable in levels of depravity bordering on satanic, and yes, he was one of them also. Back in 2014, when this man really died, like the biblical story, the bush went on fire. Only this bush won't talk anymore. Ironically, the only truth that ever came out of this man's mouth was to the journalist, where he said if the people ever found out what we have done, they would have chased us down the streets and lynched us. Not quite, Mr. Sheriff. Not quite. But you met your maker and burned again, didn't you? Well, like many of your victims, I do hope you rest in peace. You see, Mr. Bush, some of us do have a thing called compassion. One hopes your return to source will garner some for you. You went up in ashes, just like your New World Order dream. Goodbye, psychopath. Hi all and welcome back to the final portion of tonight's show, and a little bit of history connected. It's only a small piece, and obviously it plays a large role in the psyche of most Americans and the fear program known as the communists and the bad Russians and the bad Chinese. And here's a coincidence for you, maybe not. Straight after World War I, 1919, Russia became communist. Straight after World War II, China became communist. Coincidence? I think not. So whilst everyone was in chaos, global wars, they wrote in new programs that have nothing to do with either country and everything to do with creating programs for future plans and hostilities. One hopes in the near future they will all collapse. This week I've received several reports of people losing it, both in their families, their partners, friends, and around them. It is not unexpected. We have warned in this show it would take place. Maybe people underestimated it a bit, but people are struggling. This week alone, I was called a little dictator. And then someone else who thinks that I think that I am the one, the special one. Not that I care much of people with that mindset, as it's all kind of based on envy and their own insecurity. And this is cropping up now as the masks escalate their fall. Both those people have much to offer in and of themselves, but choose to drag others down to their level rather than do the work to elevate themselves. We're accused this week of Kim and I being all about the money. Well, if that's the case, why did Kim turn down the substantial offer for us to walk away and hand over the trust? If it's all about the money, we would have took the $2 billion and ran. Could have been on a nice warm sunny beach resort sipping drinks and smoking fine cigars rather than being in a very small region in the middle of nowhere, 7,000 feet over a mountain in what is quite frankly for me Siberian style temperatures. You know, worrying about snipers in every corner is part of our everyday life. But these people with shallow thinking ignore that and just throw mud, hoping some of it sticks. It does stick all right, but not to the intended recipients, just them. Miss Von Reitz last week launched an extraordinary tirade accusing Kim and the team of launching an EMP weapon on her in Alaska, like she's that important. Like anyone, never mind us, would launch a 7.1 earthquake just to keep an old script-reading internet fool quiet. You know, me personally, when the quake happened, I wonder whether it was Anna who caused it by dropping a bullshit file, which appears to grow more extensive by the day. Again, it's all very frustrating when the same people could offer so much more than just drag others down due to their own weaknesses and insecurities. And these are just some of the signs of the changes in my circle. But I'm hearing through many members the same things is happening in their lives also. Like I said, we did warn this would take place, and some will take it on board and prepare themselves, and others are either preoccupied or not trusting in themselves enough, choose not to prepare and wait until it all unfolds, then wonders what hit them. But there's a raft now of irritability, projection, anger without cause, argumentative, irrational. These are all symptoms you will face and observe in these coming times. Now, what we prepare for here is not for those people, but us. I warned back in November 2016 it was too late for the non-believers in anything except the official script crafted for them to not have an easier landing. It's too late. You can't unlearn your life in a few years, which is essentially what we've all done, aligned with better practices of thinking, acting and lifestyles. And even after all the groundbreaking shows we have had in THI, there are still some that shock to the system type shows unveiling at regular intervals. But you have had 31 months now of THI to absorb and process all that, plus other shows that all add to the bigger picture. Not just THI. You gave yourself a chance to scratch the surface, never mind go down the rabbit hole. Those people outside of us never took the path of unlearning, then defining a new path, a new course, a new way of how to interact with each other without the overreaching doctrine, rhetoric or stagnant learning that was presented to us, that quite frankly has held humanity back at enormous cost to us and themselves. They're just too stupid to see it, too content to keep their own shallow bubble around them and hope nothing interferes with their small bubble world, with their banal thinking of governments look after us, the military saves us from boogeymen, staged killing events don't happen, wars are about fighting the bad guys, and banks look after our money, the church and its leaders, priests, bishops and cardinals are there for us, and the biggest classic of all, the portal people tell the truth. Newsflash for the small world service to self-bubble world people. They're not. They never were. We, the Breakaway Group, coined by Shane, who will be on the show next Monday, have to step aside and focus on you and us, as stated 2 years ago. It's not being selfish, it's being realistic. We should not feel guilty. We all tried to help them, and boy, did we try. They're just not ready for reality and want to continue the city of light, pill of a world of illusion. They are riddled with fear and their own self-doubts, mired in the saviour program. Children amongst adults, always wanting parenting, never taking responsibility, never offering solutions, only adding problems which have impacted all of our lives. It is they who are selfish, they who should feel guilty, and it is they who have ignored all the ills in this world at great cost to us all. Everyone was given a choice, and I mean everyone, whether it was a conscious one or a subconscious one. Everyone was given a choice. And in essence, they turned their backs on us and life in general. And those people are just not ready for the higher frequencies already permeating through this planet. The two worlds gap will get wider as time goes on. What I'm asking our listeners to do is not to fear it, but embrace it. As despite all that has been thrown at us, the targeting, the abuse, the ridicule, we're all still here. I'm far more sane than they'll ever be. In this lifetime, anyway. But those people will get help. They'll have far more help than we ever got. They'll have far more support than we ever got. It's just not our role to do it. Some may not agree with that, and I get that. But over time, as proven many times in this show, time proves right. Final piece, I think. No, second to last piece. Monday's show was another groundbreaker in many ways. And it kind of connected so many dots on so many levels. And every person on the planet will have been triggered in one way or another, whether they listen to that show or not. It spoke to us all in so many different ways. Some felt stupid, but how can you feel stupid if you don't have the knowledge? What is stupid is when you have the knowledge and don't use it. Many have reported they were crying during and after the show for a variety of reasons, because it triggered so many emotions within each of us. It was always going to be that way. As you all know, much of our history is false, and there have been and are many hidden aspects, and this was just the latest. I don't think the real impact of certain events has been fully absorbed by people yet, and only over time will the stark reality of what has already taken place here will be deemed extraordinary. But the externalization of everything in life has taken its toll in so many ways that nobody now knows how to fully accept internal gratifications and benefits due to all being switched to the external aspects. Like I've said before, funding is an external aspect. In fact, all currency is an external aspect of the transfer of the internal life force energy, which has far more value than people will ever realise. People wanting mass arrests, like it's the be-all and end-all, again, is another externalised effect due in part to their own guilt and shame, whilst mouthing in frustration of how we allowed all this to happen, all in front of our face. There will always be people around who will need to be arrested for crimes. There have been many in the past who never paid for their crimes externally, anyway. Internally they did. both when alive and also when dead. Karma sees to that, and a return to source and your own judgment rubber stamps it. People even sold their soul, as because they and others can't see the soul as it's internal, and so their thinking was, it doesn't matter. Same applies to being heart damaged by a loved one or someone who has passed on. This is particularly more difficult in males, as it's not considered manly to cry, which is a release mechanism. Females can cry and garner the sympathy, although sometimes that crying aspect is used as a manipulation tool to garner sympathy where none is warranted. Now, you may see people upset in the external, but the internal hurts far more, as many of you will know. And those who sold their souls and dabbled in the dark arts have darkened their souls, and it spreads like a cancer, which is an interesting analogy, as the same dark spirit beings who consume you reside in the same place where cancer comes from, the astral layer. Now, given the increase in walk-ins and vessel possession, which we've highlighted in recent shows over the last 60 years, could it be the real reason why cancer rates have skyrocketed? Despite many more people now being non-smokers than the previous generations. Newsflash, cancer is not caused by smoking. All the ancients smoked and none of them had cancer. Something to ponder. Of course, we covered the various ways of possession, and you've got the likes of the Rothschilds, who have been involved in Kabbalism, Jewish Sabbatism and Frankism, all of which are involved in witchcraft. And the fact that the Rothschilds use the occultic seal of Solomon as a family symbol is indicative of that. The six-pointed star is the symbol of Moloch and Ashtaroth. The occultic hexagram is on the Knesset, and is also displayed on the Jewish flag. The six-pointed star made its way from Egyptian pagan rituals of worship to the goddess Ashtaroth and Moloch to King Solomon when he went into I'm a God mode and idolatory mode. He lost his way. From there it then progressed through the magic arts, witchcraft, including Arab magicians, Sinbad. We covered the Druids, the witches and the Satanists. Astrology was also used, through to the Kabbalah and to Isaac Luria, a Kabbalist in the 16th century, onto Meir Amschel Bauer. Bauer being Rothschild. He then changed his name to a symbol, to Zionism, to the Knesset of the new state of Israel, to the flag of Israel and its medical organization equivalent to the Red Cross. Same symbol. It was also speculated that Hitler was also totally controlled by a demonic spirit, that he simply gave himself over to Satan's control, as they call it. And an ex-member of the satanic hierarchy of the Illuminati expressed the belief that there have been certain evil men throughout history that have totally given themselves over to possession by Satan. That these men, Hitler, Genghis Khan, for example, have been Antichrist types, simply human containers for the resonance of a very powerful demonic spirit, or even Satan himself. Now, the Illuminati member believed that when Satan no longer had need for the body of his Antichrist, he would discard it with death and find another willing soul to sacrifice his bodily control to the devil. And people played the role of the Antichrist. But you have to understand, though, that terms like Antichrist, Satan, Lucifer, Lilith, Ra, the Lord, have all been played by various beings. It's all like a role play in a theatre or a film. It's like if you were reproducing Gone with the Wind movie now, you would need new actors and new actresses. In different eras of time, different characters played different roles. And contrary to the many people in alt media who think they are the reincarnation of this or that being, not all were heroes either. This has been a big problem, and the announcement that the realms are folding in on themselves, as essentially it goes down to a grain of sand. Everything folds in. Now, there are still the jinns here. The ones that were bound are all gone. The realms are being emptied out. And the jinns will have to abide by the rules here. As I understand it, a lot of them were here before us. But they're aware of the Galactic Council ruling and the peace treaty and have to observe it, or they will face the same consequences. What will happen now is, slowly but surely, the cabal and the top order will have to do their own dirty work. A lot of the fun and games that have gone on, where they're targeting people using non-physical form entities to mess with people. Yes, some have fun and move the car keys, and you go searching around the house for 3/4 of an hour and you were right back where you looked the first time. But some have far more sinister actions. That has to stop, and will. So the impact of that will be enormous. And yes, it can be perceived as not external. It's not tangible. You can't garner external proof as such, but it is there. The last piece of tonight's show are more statements, some of which I made in the chat this morning. And it's something people need to ponder on. Is how can you trust others when many don't trust themselves? It's a common problem that needs to be addressed. Reality is defined by the person, in essence, on what you experience. That's your reality. But what is unique in this time period is we are finding out it is a common theme amongst this group. Shared experiences. What is real to you is not always real to others. But you should never define your own experiences by others. That is externalizing when your truth is internal. Some things can be investigated and proof garnered, but most of this war, which is for the mind and the heart, is largely providing no external proof, and it takes an inner knowing and trust to make sense of the limitations of our 5 senses in here. But some have more senses, and those are the ones who see for real. We are the sin eaters. We have swallowed the poison and are now providing the antidote. And it's up to us all to do that to the best of our own abilities. The final song tonight can be interpreted in perhaps many different ways. But the lyrics and the words in the song is about people giving the badges and guns away, laying down the symbols of oppression and approaching heaven's door, not for death, but going through the astral heaven's door onto the mental planes, and a step up of your own progression. Now the object is for us all to knock on that door and burst through it, and another of humanity's soul that lights up like a beacon. This is what they have rarely blocked humanity doing for so long. The door awaits, and the choice is yours. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. I'll be back on Monday at 8 PM EST.